When you hear that story of Jesus suffering and death, just proclaimed or even chanted hauntingly as we just heard it, which of the characters do you identify with? Whose story resonates with you? Are you there at the foot of the cross with the beloved disciple and with the mother of Jesus, remaining faithful to the end no matter how hard? Are you Jesus himself even, trying to remain faithful to this mission that you believe that you've been given by God? What about Peter, who tries and tries and tries and fails, but then tries again? I don't know about you, but those are the characters that are sometimes most attractive to me, because they're finally the heroes of the story, the ones that lead us forward, that give us hope, that might carry us all the way to Easter. But they're not the only characters, not nearly. In fact, this particular story of Jesus' suffering and death is full of people we might see as bad guys or villains. This particular story has been so dangerous because over and over again we've called those villains hoidioi, the Jews in English. We've softened that language now to take the sting out. But still the story is full of the people that we might blame for what has happened. Do you think there'd be any profit for us in dwelling with them for a while to see if maybe they have something to teach us as we reflect on the meaning of this terrible story? I don't necessarily think of them as bad guys or villains, but my mind first goes to those deserters at the beginning. Folks that wanted to follow Jesus, but couldn't make it even halfway. They almost gave up at the beginning. Perhaps we've all had an experience like that, something so terrifying, so shocking, that the first thing we want to do is turn and run. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. Evolution has trained our brains to stay away from things that might kill us. I know that's true of myself as I've watched what has unfolded these past months in so many cities. ICE raids, wondering if I've had the courage to stand still when out of a car people popped out with guns. To be honest, I'm not sure I would have had the courage that so many showed in places like Chicago or Minneapolis, other places. I'd even admit that when I went to an organized protest with clergy at the Broadview facility, it was all I could do to stand still. It's not easy to stay in place when something terrifying is happening, even if you know that it might be right. Then there are those chief priests and temple officials, religious figures for sure, but political ones too, charged with trying to preserve the institutions of Israel and Judaism as they lived under the domination of the Roman Empire. I suppose in this time of separation between church and state in our own culture, we imagine they don't exist anymore, except we thought for a second. We realized that our country is engaged in a war whose government includes identified religious figures, or even that many in our own administration have invoked God as the protector of a reign of death and destruction. Maybe we're not so far from those temple priests. I don't think I speak out of turn when I say that the clergy that you know have struggled to find the right words to embody and speak the gospel of peace and justice without descending into the partisan quagmire that is ripping apart our common good. It's so odd to say, but I have to admit that I do sympathize with those temple priests trying to find the right balance that would allow their religion and their people to survive, even if I can't agree with the way that they did it. They, of course, weren't the only politicians. Then there's Pontius Pilate, a middleman and a politician, if ever there was one, caught between the responsibility of keeping the peace in his province and pleasing his master in Rome, though I think he cared less about keeping the peace than about pleasing his master. But I think we've known those people stuck in the middle. They could be in government, maybe not. To take us out of this moment, I couldn't help but thinking of someone that I much respect, Colin Powell, giving his testimony more than 20 years ago before the United Nations Security Council about possible weapons of mass destruction in a country not too far from Iran. I always got the impression that he wasn't entirely convinced of what he was saying as he spoke before the whole world. I don't know if he was. But he was sent there to speak on behalf of the administration that he served. And we know the consequence of that. But perhaps we also know that in different moments of our lives, perhaps we've been that middle person, asked to do something we weren't entirely sure was right, maybe doing it anyway, because that's what we had to do. When I think of those temple guards and Roman soldiers, that's true in spades. Orders to brutalize a Jewish peasant whom they didn't even know and probably didn't care about. We don't hear it in the story, but do you ever wonder if any of them said, "Why are we doing this? What's the point?" Can we not put ourselves in the position of those people involved in conflict now, whether from Israel or Lebanon or Iran or the United States or any place else in the world, all those folks put in that position, even those folks who think they're enforcing our country's immigration laws. Perhaps some of them do it, if not gladly, then because of their duty. Perhaps others wake up in the middle of the night, wondering if they're doing what they should, what's right. What a hard place to be. And then there are the crowds. Crucify him. We have no king but Caesar. The mob. Do you think that's what they were really like, though? I can only imagine that as soldiers dragged Jesus through the streets, everyone in them ducked to the nearest corner to get out of the way. They didn't want to be seen. Maybe some of those women of Jerusalem saw what was happening and said, "Oh God, they got another one." Then maybe they thought, "Thank God it wasn't me, or my child, or my spouse, or my friend." I wonder if the Venezuelan folks we accompanied over these past years have sometimes had to think that too. It's not an easy story if you sit with all the people. What's the point of repeating a story that seems to be going on right now, full of intractable problems? People overcome by fear, by greed, people with mixed motives. And yet our tradition insists, and has insisted for a very long time, that we read the whole story not once but twice, every year. That we remember it every time we celebrate the great Thanksgiving that is the Eucharist, even when we recite the Creed, to call it back to mind. What wisdom might we find if we sit with this intractable, tragic, ever-repeating story? there is perhaps one character we might dwell with, who might show us how we might do it. It is the divine character, Jesus, stretched out on the cross, looking down at all the people, the deserters, the priests, the politicians, the soldiers, the mob, and casting his eyes with compassion upon the whole broken, tragic thing. And not just compassion, but forgiveness. Father, he says in Luke's version, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. What would it be like to dwell with those characters? To dwell with them in our own stories, to dwell with them when it's been us, and to join Jesus now and always with that same gaze of compassion. Even to take that one more step that is his forgiveness. Not something that wipes away tragedy without consequence, but the kind of forgiveness that leaves us free, not to respond in the same ways anymore, but free to give ourselves as Jesus did for the salvation of everything. It's the freedom that let him give his life away as a prayer. It could be the freedom that allows us to stand firm when we want to run away. The freedom that will allow us to remember who our real master is and what it means to serve the one who came to serve. The freedom that allows us to stand with all those crowds ground down between the powerful, so that we can be their advocates and friends and insist upon their dignity. That's a lot to ask. Maybe we can't always do it, but one thing we can do, and we will do now, is stretch out our arms as Jesus did and join in his great prayer. We will pray for our church, which we know to be imperfect and broken sign of the reign of God that we're supposed to proclaim, that we might be better partners with God in witnessing that reconciliation that began in the cross. We will pray for the world and its leaders, that more and more, please God, it might be on earth as it is in heaven. We'll pray for the Jewish people and anyone who's ever been the target of scapegoating and blame, and pray that the whole human race may stand together in solidarity and freedom and love. We will extend our arms and pray for all those who are dispossessed, who are forgotten, who are lonely, who are starving, who are ground down in this story even now. And pray that we might be transformed so that they don't have to suffer anymore. We will pray with Jesus now, as if our lives depended on it. As if the life of the world and all creation depended on it. As if the lives of all who are suffering and dispossessed and forgotten depended on it. Because it does.